Keep a fire burning red and a Joshua representing for comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you go on like you know, like come son. Red.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. I know what you can even money. Money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. You can keep, you can even money. When you've been a corrupt you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you have been conniving money. When you had your pocket full, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle to tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, joker. Neighbor, joker. Neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a kill up this. A 2 pound note and a kill up this. A 2 pound note and a kill up this. This is all the money that me walk. I said money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politician they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. There's one set of people getting aisle money. There's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Hey fans, it's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton. Dance to the magical songs of yesteryear by popular DJs and Camps Audio. Admission is free. Come out, let's make memories at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton North.
Comes audio son. You burn this wine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki, Red Hat.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Ramveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
The People's National Congress Reform presents Emerald Splash, a Georgetown to Linden bus excursion and pool party on Sunday, September 22nd from Congress Place to the Toucan Complex poolside in Elias Ward. Music by Hot to Vibe Sound and LT One Man Band. Excursion tickets cost $5,000. Available at Congress Place Sophia. Venue entrance fee $1,000. Buses leave Congress Place at 9 a.m. sharp. It's the Emerald Splash bus excursion and pool party. Let's take a drive and bust a line with the PNCR.
this is... Hello, hi, good morning. Oh gosh, y'all look so good this morning. Good morning. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It is 7:24 on the 11th day of September in the year 2024. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. How you been? Morning, neighbor, morning. How are you doing? How are you been? How was you yesterday, last night, this morning? How are you make out? I understand it was raining cats and dogs, animals in Barbies last evening. And this morning it's raining cats and dogs, animals in Georgetown. We on the East Coast here, maybe we're favored for the heat. Yes. Anyways, I hope you're keeping well. I hope you are taking precautionary measures. You are remembering that there's an advisory of what I would call exceptional heat during this period. Ensure that you and your children and your family members and your friends walk around with enough water. I was about to say liquids to keep yourself hydrated. Hydration is important. Please ensure you remain hydrated in this time. Take all precautionary measures. I mean, yes, water is life, they say in Guyana. Conserve it. In this instance, I don't want you to conserve water. I want you to use it as much as is possible. Your water bill might go up in terms of the amount of water, bottled water you have to buy. But if you can afford it, and I know it might be a challenge for some people, but if you can afford it, please don't skimp on your money. Drink water, because the money you'll spend on water, I am sure, is way less than you're going to have to spend for medical attention if you were to suffer heat stroke or any other such complaints as a result of dehydration. Please do. Good. For those administrators of schools, the ministry and the departments of education and so on, please ensure that there is adequate water supply in the schools for both staff and learners. It's the least you can do. And like I suggested earlier, you all need to put cooling systems in the school so that the heat is not going to be overbearing and overwhelming for the occupants of those box ovens, which we have as schools. It is Wednesday morning. It is now 7:27, and on Wednesdays we usually have Dr. Hines on the show. Last week he was not able to be here for whatever reasons, but definitely is in the show this morning. And so, Dr. Hines, welcome to Guyanese Morning Time. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm fine, thanks.
I'm happy that you're fine. How is the heat at your end? Is it well? Yeah, you live in a place where it's never cold.
Well, where I am now, it's the desert, and it's the heat is normative here.
Normative, good, normative. That's not bad at all. Of course, you heard of that, what I call extended forecast for extraordinary heat in this part of the world, the Caribbean. Including Guyana.
Yes, I've been following it.
Good. So what's going on since back then, man, is well, but 2 weeks now since we met on the program and we talked about what's happening in the society and so on and so forth. What's going on? Anything you want to address before I get into my usual stuff?
No.
All right. Very well. So there's a lot that has happened over the period of time. We saw the release of the half-year report, and Guyana is in what $500 million US debt, or 500 million, some that big fancy figure, debt, right? And there are many of us who are asking why this country has to be in so much debt when it is at a place now where it is earning millions of US dollars per day from petroleum production. What are your thoughts on the half-year report?
Well, if you want me to talk about the debt, I can offer some insights there. Debt in itself is not such a bad thing. I know it's difficult sometimes to wrap our minds around that. Countries are in debt all the time. Big countries, United States, they all borrow money. Because remember, you're borrowing money with the expectation of what you will earn. And given all the projections in terms of oil, it is estimated that we have a lot of money coming in. And so the government can afford to borrow against the money that is coming in. That is what it is doing, and that is what governments generally do. So on the face of it, the debt is not such a worrying thing, because we do have money coming in to cover the debt. The problem is, what are we doing with the money that we are borrowing? That's where the issue is, and not so much the debt. National debt is, like I said, a normal thing, especially for a country like ours that is expecting a lot of money to come in. So really the issue is not the national debt. is what are we doing with the money that we are borrowing?
Indeed, what are we doing with the money we are borrowing? Because I see, as many would say, a lot of this money is being spent on big ticket infrastructure. But every day, someone is able to point out the failings of the infrastructure projects which are being undertaken by these projects. And so one is forced to ask about the sincerity, if I can call it that, with which these monies which are being borrowed are being quote unquote invested. Any concern there for the manner in which the money is being spent? I see some people say it's a way of the PPP transferring the nation's wealth to itself, or its family, friends, and cronies.
Well, of course, we've established that. We have established that the priority of the government is quote unquote infrastructure. And again, on the face of it, economically speaking, if a government spends a lot of money on infrastructure, and it is able to make the case that our infrastructure is so bad that it needs fixing. Now, you spend a lot of money on infrastructure for two things. I mean, for the benefit of your citizens, good roads, good bridges means that people are able to move from one place to another quicker than normal. If you have more roads, people are able to move quicker. With all the cars that we have on the road, there is a case that can be made for more roads. So under normal circumstances, one would not make a lot of noise if a government is refurbishing or expanding the infrastructure network in a country. Like I said, you do it for internal purposes, moving people from one place to the other quicker than normal, etc. Putting bridges across rivers cuts a lot of time, and so on and so forth. You also refurbish your infrastructure to attract investments. Investors coming into a country want good infrastructure. You want good roads, depending on what kind of industry that you are investing in. But any investor would like to see good roads, bridges, particularly good electricity supply, energy supply. So you refurbish and upgrade your infrastructure also to attract investment. And so those are the questions we have to ask. I mean, the government is spending close to 60% of its budget on infrastructural project. And you have to ask, what is the objective of the government? What is the government refurbishing the infrastructure to do? And the government can argue, yes, we have a lot of cars on the road. We need to move people from one place to another quicker than normal. And that point is well taken. In terms of attracting investors, I'm not too sure. I will leave that to the economists, because the question is this big infrastructural rampage, as I call it, on the part of the government, is it aimed at attracting new investors? I am not too sure of that. So the next question then is, why, how much you spend on infrastructure as distinct from what you spend on other aspects of the economy? I did mention the question of energy just now. When you look at the blackouts that we have and the historical problem we've had with electricity, one would think that that should and would be an area of priority for any government, because clearly we are losing a lot of productive time because of blackout, one. Two, we are inconveniencing citizens. You can have all the best roads, and people have all the big cars and moving from one place to the other. But when you get home, if there's no electricity, then there's not very much you can do. So we are losing a lot of productive time. We are frustrating our own citizens. One would think that if you're talking about infrastructure, that's an area of infrastructure that we would have paid serious attention to. So what it's saying to me is that the government does not prioritize. The government does not have a coherent approach to infrastructure. The government is not sitting down and saying, let us see what are the needs of our people, and then fit your infrastructure plans for the needs of the people and the needs of, and by people I mean your citizens, your workers, and so on, and of course your private sector. You know, what are their needs? And I am hard pressed to look at the government heavy priority on infrastructure and to see it as part of some larger objective that the government has. And so in that sense, I am questioning, as most people are doing, why this infrastructure? Why all these bridges and roads, as opposed to fixing electricity, for example. And I did point out a couple of weeks ago that even when they're building the roads and the bridges and so on, you still see in particular areas, lot of backup in traffic. Over the last 3 or 4 months or so, it's been difficult on the East Coast corridor, for example, certain times in the afternoon. And you're talking about 4 lanes, 2 lanes going and 2 lanes coming in the afternoons, 2 lanes going eastwards. And then you have the railway embankment. So in a sense, what you have is a 3-lane highway in the afternoon, yet is hell getting from Georgetown to the lower and central East Coast. So you're asking the question, are these roads answering the problems or fixing the problems that we have in terms of commuting? And one doesn't see very much evidence of that. Again, we are not opposed to infrastructure, but we are saying that you have to spend on infrastructure as much as you spend on other pressing areas of the political economy. That's one. Secondly, what are the outcomes you're looking for in this infrastructure? Are you looking to tackle the problem of commuter congestion? If so, we don't see any evidence that that is abating. Are you trying to bring in, to make it easier for foreign investors to come in? Well, maybe. So they're gonna come in and they're gonna get lots of roads and so on, but bad electricity. Why not take some of that money and invest and fix the electricity problem? So there are questions as to what is the government's objective? And so it is at that point that we come to the conclusion that the government objective is spending for the sake of spending. And why you choose to spend on infrastructure in this manner, as opposed to spending on wages and salary or some of the other things to do with human development. And that is where we arrive at the answer that it's a way of funneling resources to particular segments of the society. And once you begin to go there, you would begin to fit the pieces together. You begin to look at the relationship between the government and the so-called private sector. Who dominates the private sector? And when you look at who dominates the private sector, the profile fits a certain kind of citizen that is likely to embrace the government, or certainly embrace the government thrust. And so one comes to the conclusion that the government is using this infrastructural onslaught, because that's what it is, as a means of distributing or maldistributing resources to citizens. In any case, one of the functions of government is to distribute resources, common resources. That's a normal function of government. And so nothing is wrong for government besides that, look, here are the priorities in the society, and then we're going to spend money on those priorities. And in the process of spending money, we are distributing money because people have to provide goods and services and labor and so forth. So again, on the surface of it, you may think nothing of it. But when you look at who is benefiting from these large projects and large part of the budget that is spent on these capital projects and these infrastructural projects, then you're beginning to see that the only intentional aspect of this spending on infrastructure is where the money is going. And the money is funneling through contractors, big contractors, and then contractors subcontract, and maybe subcontractors subcontract, and so on. So it's a means of distributing resources. And if those to whom the contracts are given represent one segment of the society, whether it's the rich and powerful, or whether it's the rich and powerful of a particular ethnic group, you are then funneling great amount of resources through these people. Now, one may argue, well, that's normal in society, but of course it's normal. It's normal for contractors to be given contracts. But the contracting system has to be democratic. It has to, if that's the means by which you are going to distribute resources, then you have to make sure that those means are democratic. That is, that the contractors represent the gamut of the demographics in the country. If that's the means you're using to funnel, you're not using wages. You're not putting plenty money in wages as a means of putting money in people's pocket. You are funneling the money through big mega contracts. Some of these contractors are non-Guyanese contractors. Some of these contractors are bringing in their own labor. When you take into consideration, for example, that we are importing, 462 drivers, and the company that is coming in is bringing its own truck drivers. When we have truck drivers in Guyana, all right, who could be getting those jobs, you are bringing in, the government has given the company permission to bring in its own drivers. The point I'm making here is that the government strategy is not one that is designed to, in an equitable and democratic way, to funnel resources down to the Guyanese people. In many regards, in some regards, the money is going out of the country. In this case, where we're hiring drivers, those money are going out of the country. I mean, the drivers may pay some minimal taxes here. I mean, if you bring in drivers from another country to come in to Guyana, the arrangement those drivers are going to make is that they pay as little taxes as possible. So a lot of those monies will be going back out of the country, right? Some of the trickle-down money will go to the favored demographics of the contractors. But we know you know, the bulk of the money is being taken away by contractor. Contractor gets a contract for what? For $2 billion, and he takes off the bat $1 billion of those dollars, and then he subcontracts the next $1 billion. The next contractor take $500 million, and he subcontracts the next $500 million, and so on. And so in the end, by the time the money is coming down to the so-called workers or to the small contractors, a lot of it is gone already. So the economic thrust of infrastructure, right, has its economic outcomes, which I'm saying is not coherent, is not part of a larger economic vision. Where the outcomes are palpable is in the political outcomes, in the sense that the monies are going to favored people, contractors who are favored by the government, contractors who get into the favor of the government. And so it is those contractors that the vast money is going to. So if you're spending 60% on capital infrastructure program, then you left 40% to spend on other things. And you wake up one morning and all of a sudden we're reading the papers, we are in trouble, our children are not passing mathematics. And you know, they have to spend money in trying to patch that up. Because first of all, you did not have an educational vision. You did not plan. Nobody can tell me that when you were doing the budget last year, that you didn't expect that math passes was going to be bad as it did. It was 34% last year. And if you're doing the budget for this year and you're serious about education, you'll say, well, okay, we know it's 34%. And so we have to do an education budget that tackles that question of poor mathematics outcomes, poor English outcomes. We have to tackle literacy and so forth. So that because you diagnose the problem and you create a vision for the problem, then your budget reflects that. But here it is, clearly the government has no vision as far as education is concerned. As I said, 60% of the money gone to infrastructure, so you're scrambling around to put a little bit here for education, a little bit there for healthcare, a little bit there for agriculture, a little bit there for this, a little bit there for that. And so you are now coming towards the end of the fiscal year, and you're discovering, oh boy, education is in trouble. Well, education was in trouble a long time. But because you didn't have a coherent vision for education as part of a larger vision for the country, you did not allocate the kind of resources to the particular places in the political economy, such as the education sector, such as spending on math, on upping our performance in mathematics, dealing with the question of school dropouts, dealing with the question of illiteracy, dealing with the question of teachers' compensation, and all of that. All of that is part of the large education, but there's no education vision because you've taken 2/3 of the resources that is coming in, that you expect to come in, and you are putting it in infrastructure. So let's say the government wasn't scamping us through infrastructure. They were indeed sincere with infrastructure. We're going to have the best bridges, the best roads, lots of roads, adequate roads, and so on. But we're going to have a dumb society. Nice, shiny, big roads, and we have people who are not literate, a population that's not literate in numeracy. So let's say you're fixing the road for investors to come in. Investors are not only looking for infrastructure, good infrastructure, they're also looking for a skilled workforce. And a skilled workforce, the basis of any skilled workforce is the literacy of the workforce. So you're building roads for investors to come in, but you're not building mines for investors to come in. The investors are not going to come just for roads. Or they're going to come for the roads, but they're going to walk with their labor. Because you are not providing the level of skilled labor that is needed to attract investors. I mean, we're living in a technological age, and mathematics is at the basis of developing your technological capacity. So again, you're building the roads, open to attract investors, but investors are not going to come for roads alone. Or you're building the roads so that people can move from one place to the other very quickly. And people are going to buy cars. They can't read and write properly. They're not going to be able to pass their driver's license exam. And so what do they buy? The driver's license, accident galore on the roads. So this is not a government that understands what it is to have a larger vision. A vision that brings together the priorities as far as development is concerned. What are the areas of priority? Education, healthcare, infrastructure, wages and salary. And when you put all of that together and you say, okay, so I have these 8 priorities. Here is the amount of money we have at our disposal. Here is the amount of money that we are expecting. Here's the amount of money we are borrowing. This is what we have. This is the vision. Let us now distribute the resources based on the larger vision that we have. That is not what we are seeing from this government.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Just to drive home the point that you made about the, as I would say, correlation or the failure of the government to see the correlation between the education of citizens and development or attracting investors. Let me share with you a story from Travis Chase. Breaking, this is 16 hours ago yesterday. Breaking, AGP Nightly News, nearly 400 people will lose their jobs from November 2024. As ITEL Guyana, located at 8182 Camp and Rob Streets, will close its site. ITEL, a business process outsourcing provider, said that after extensive analysis and discussion amongst their leadership team, board members and stakeholders, and despite the investments made, they have no choice but to accept that their Georgetown site is no longer sustainable within their business model. In a letter dispatched to SAF on September 10, 2024, ITEL said, quote, "We believe that Guyana is a gem within the Caribbean and has great potential. When we chose to invest in Guyana, we did so with every intention of making it a destination of choice for contact centers. Yet, we have faced growing challenges despite the country's continued economic growth," end quote. Open quote, "As Guyana's economy expands, the cost of doing business is rising, and it's getting harder and harder to find and retain qualified candidates. This makes it difficult to attract and retain Fortune 500 clients, which is critical to maintaining a steady flow of business into the center," end quote. Top management of the company noted also that every effort has been made to work with the team on the ground to address attrition and absenteeism, cut costs, and engage the labor force. Quote, "Despite these efforts, we did not see the improvement we needed in order to take our site and team to the next level," end quote, the company noted. Right? And so here it is, we're spending hundreds of billions saying that we're investing in infrastructure. Like you said, we're neglecting education. We're failing in the education policies. And the impact is right before our eyes to see 400 persons are going to be laid off in a matter of a few mornings, because the employers are saying, listen, we haven't been able to find the kind of qualification that we're looking for or that is necessary to drive this business. Cost of operations keep rising, and so we have to beat out of here and perhaps go somewhere else, right? The other concern for me is all of the spending. We're seeing all of the mediocrity in the execution of the projects all of these monies are being spent on. It's good, as many will say, like you rightly said, debt is not such a bad thing. But what happens when these projects fail within a short period of time, and then the society doesn't get the full benefit of the spending, and the nation is then left burdened with the debts of the repayment? What happens then? What are the long-term implications of this level of borrowing to execute these projects, albeit that, according to the World Bank and so on, maybe 37 to 47% of this money is being wasted?
Well, you see, again, I go back, the problem is not the borrowing. The countries borrow, that's normal. That's how the financial system operates. In a country, you talk to people who have small to medium-sized business, and they have certain facilities at the bank that they go and borrow money. They pay their wages this week. They make money next week. They pay back what they borrowed last week, and they borrow this week for next week. That's normal in business. So that's why I'm not stressing on the debt. We have monies coming in to cover the debt. The problem is not the debt. The problem is not the debt. The problem is how the government spends the money. And that is what is going to have long-term implications for the country. It is not the debt. Like I said, the debt is normal, and I wouldn't put my energies there. My energies is having borrowed the money. And you're going to pay the money, you're going to read the NRF, and you're going to pay your debt, and so on and so forth. We are capable of paying the debt, given the barrels of oil that are being anticipated in the next couple of years. The problem is how you're spending the money. And that company, I noted it in the news today, is a classic example of where the problem is. When you're laying off 400 and something workers in a small society like ours, there's a lot of workers. If you're talking about 4 people per family, an average of a family of 4, right? You're talking about close to 2,000 people who are going to be directly affected. And you don't move from one company of that seemingly of that level, skill level, and find another company, another job like that. And so what it shows is poor planning by the government. You're bringing in Fortune 500 companies, right? Fortune 500 companies demand a certain kind of labor, a certain kind of skill set. Are you training people to meet that requirement with the kind of investment that you're going after? And in any case, whether you're training people at a certain level, or you're talking about accountants, financial analysts, and so on, you don't produce that kind of high level skill overnight. That skill, you have to have an education system that is geared towards producing that kind of skill, and it starts with basic things like math. So you don't have a long-term plan to produce the kind of skill to meet the demands of that kind of investment. It's just non-planning, poor planning, no vision on the part of the government. That's where the problem is. That's where the problem. If you go and you telling the government about debt, I mean, they will eat you raw. because standard economics will say that, you know, debt is normative, right? Especially for a country that is getting the kind of resources that we have. I mean, you know, it is what they do with the debt, what they do with the money that they're borrowing, right? That you're engaging in investments, you're spending money on things, and you're not getting the necessary outcome from it. That is why very quickly they got to go back into the NRF, they got to go back into the supplemental and ask for money. Because the budget in the first place is not based on a vision. And so when after 6 months you discover, I need money for health, I need money for this, I need money for that, you got to go back to the supplemental, because in the first place you did not have, your budget was not based on clear priorities, clear outcomes, was not based on a coherent view of the country's challenges, the country's potential, and then you spend money based on that. No, no. If you are looking for that kind of skill and you to bring for Fortune 500 companies here, you have to, your education sector has to be linked to that. University of Guyana is pivotal in producing that kind of skill. But the University of Guyana will tell you that it can't produce that type of skill if you haven't students who are coming in who are not able to pass math. I understand that at UG, you know, they have to do their own remedial math thing there because students are obviously applying and don't have math. And for most of the subject areas, you need mathematics. And I understand UG is having its own remedial exam for them to take. But if you come past mathematics at C6 and CXC, how are you going to pass mathematics at the UG exam? You know, it's really lack of planning. And the lack of planning comes from a lack of vision. And the lack of vision comes from people who are not skilled in statecraft, people who are not skilled in distributing resources, and people who do not set out to develop the human capacity of their country.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. I noticed a document circulating, I don't know if you've seen it, of lands that have been taken away from the people at Mocha. And I would say reassigned to friends and cronies of the PPP. Have you seen that document?
Yes, I've seen it.
And what should I say are your immediate reactions to a government which claims that, because I listened to a program with Rickford Burke and Paul Slow, I think the program is called Ride Along, and the so-called Minister of Information, Kwame McCoy, called into that program to again say that, you know, the PPP is not racist, it's not anti-African, it's not discriminatory. But when we see the document, we see that all of the lands that were taken away are previously allocated to people in Mocha, and then taken away and reallocated to friends and families of the PPP. How do you react? What are your immediate reactions to?
My immediate reaction is to fight the government,
such as this.
My immediate reaction is to up the fight against the government. I mean, there's nothing else to talk about there. We knew that that was going to happen. And, you know, look, we have said 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we said this is a country of an emerging apartheid state. And the government blasted us. And some black people felt that we were going too far. Well, does the evidence show that we were going too far? The evidence shows that we are in order.
You suggest that we need to up the fight. Care to clarify that?
There's nothing to clarify about that, I think, Brother Tidaki.
Well, one might ask of the fight, are we even fighting? Because there are so many battles out there that should be fought that the populace is of the opinion. Certainly a large majority of our viewers are of the opinion, that, hey, no fighting taking place. We got electoral battles to fight.
Well, that is denying our humanity. Human beings fight. Part of our nature is fighting. We're always fighting. We may not be on the road licking down things and carrying on and so on, but we're fighting. I do not share the view that we're not fighting. We may not be fighting adequately, but we're fighting. I got up from my bed early this morning to fight. You got up early from your bed to fight. Those 700-800 people who are with us right now, they're fighting.
Very well.
I don't buy this thing that we are not fighting. To say we're not fighting is to say we are not human beings. You know, we are human beings. We are fighting. Is the fight adequate? Are we getting the most effective leadership? Because leadership is very important in political fight. Citizens don't get up every morning and say, I'm going out on the road and fight. It doesn't happen like that. We all know that. You build a movement, and then there is a moment, and people grab that moment, and we call that moment the revolution, we call that moment the uprising, we call that moment. But you know, we have to fight all the time and prepare to get to that point, so that when that opening comes, our people take advantage of it.
So, are we fighting adequate?
Yeah, well, that is, I don't want to get into that this morning.
Okay.
I just want to say that we are fighting and to encourage more people to contribute to that fight so that we are preparing for that moment when the dam bursts or the pipe bursts, that we are able to push it to its final conclusion.
Very well. We heard recently that the government is making moves to amend the Cybercrime Act. Some of the utterances, some of the alleged statements coming out of representatives of the government suggest what I would want to call some draconian inserts. I noticed also that Clifford Burke, among others, have had cause to publish information suggesting that leading American politicians or lawmakers have suggested that what is being told to the Guyanese people by the Attorney General is a total misrepresentation of what the UN convention is suggesting in relation to the amendments that are necessary to cybercrime laws. We see it as the suggested amendments as efforts to shut down and hunt down social media influencers and commentators who continuously expose the government and the government's wickedness. I see that there's a need for fight there. What are your suggestions as to how, what are the possible ways of tackling this situation and ensuring that those draconian amendments are not passed in the National Assembly?
Well, first of all, you do what Clifford Burke did. It's to first of all expose. The government hasn't given us a draft yet. But what Burke and others have done is that they've preempted the government and said this is what the government is planning. It could have two effects. It could push them back on the back foot and prevent them from going ahead with the draconian laws. Or a phase this government is, right? It can go ahead with the draconian laws, but we are going to be in front of them because we would have exposed it to the general population that this is what they were doing, and in many regards we would be prepared for it. So So we would be in front of them. And so that's the fight. That's part of the fight that I'm talking about.
As the identified presidential candidate and co-leader of the Working People's Alliance,
of which you are a part. So don't ask me no question as if you are not a member of the WPA. Right? There's no devil's advocate question here, right? You're interviewing a brother executive member of the WPA. So don't ask me no question. That is devil's advocate question. Let me give you that disclaimer up front. Go ahead now.
As the identified presidential candidate and co-leader of the Working People's Alliance, given all of these recent challenges, as I see them, challenges, political challenges, yes, economic challenges, the quote-unquote late release of the FIA report, what is the party's position on the current behavior of the PPP? And what are some of the proposals, I dare ask, for dealing with this misbehavior?
But you're asking me some very broad question there. You know, the government attitude, I spent the last 45 minutes talking about the government attitude. You asked me about proposals. What particular proposal are you talking about? I mean, you're part of the WP executive, so you would be au fait as to what we're talking about, what our proposals are. So, you know, I mean, talk to me from a position of information, of an informed thing.
I generally, for the fact that I sit around the table, I try not to influence the conversation based on what I hear on the table. I generally want to give you that leverage to inform, and that is why I ask, quote unquote, these broad questions.
Yeah, I know, but you leave that for the other journalists who are not part. You're not a conventional journalist. You are a social media influencer with a particular partisan outlook. And if you have me here, it's two of us. Let us together help me and I help you. Or since I am the interviewee, help me to advance the thing. Don't ask me questions as though you just come from the Guyana Times or Cybercrime News.
All right, and so let me be specific to the half-year report. For example, it is the WPA's position that that Guyanese have been distracted or misinformed, disinformed in relation to the oil wealth and the need for renegotiation or non-negotiation of the oil contract. We are advised, let me say, that it is not all doom. It's not all gloom. Explain to the viewership, if you will, how the WPA sees the current management of the oil sector.
Well, I think what you're getting at is the attitude that we have taken. You see, the politics in Guyana is that if you are the PPP, there's absolutely nothing that comes from the PNC, the AFC, and the WPA that you will agree with, whether it makes sense or don't make sense. And if you are opposition party member, there's absolutely nothing that the PPP does that will make sense. So if you noted this morning, when you raised the question of debt, I said debt is not a bad thing. The reflex attitude on the part of opposition party because of the way in which this government has mismanaged our country, the bad-mindedness of the government, the spitefulness of the government. The knee-jerk response of the opposition is really to start always that once the government says something, we just have to tear it apart whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense. The WPA rejects that kind of approach. Right? So, like we were talking about the debt, we, as I said, we do not feel that the debt is a bad thing. And so we shift the conversation from the debt to the distribution of the resources, because we think that's where the problem is. The problem is not the debt. Because you're going to find that if we take government tomorrow, we will borrow. We will borrow because that's what governments do. Especially, like I said, governments that expect the kind of money to come in. So that our general approach is not to hit the PPP for the sake of hitting the PPP, but it's to hit the PPP in the areas that we feel that they are most vulnerable. And so we are not going to have that conversation on debt, on borrowing. Rather, we're going to have the conversation on how you distribute the resources that you have. So I think that's where you are going. As far as the half-yearly report is concerned, we think that it's a good half-yearly report. I mean, if your country's GDP is going to grow by 48%, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But then you raise the question, if the GDP has risen by 48%, why are you only offering teachers 10%? So we shift the conversation from the half-yearly report and the good numbers that we are seeing there to say, how does that now translate into development, into a development of people? And you move the conversation there. So that is where the WPA feel that the conversation has to be, right? Now, is the oil contract lopsided? Of course it is. Should we be getting more? Of course we should. Are we getting more than we ever had? Of course. Is it within our immediate control to get more from Exxon? No. Is it within our immediate control to do a better job at distributing what we get? Yes. You see, if you analytically and logically ask those questions and you answer this question, is that then you prioritize, right? I don't have any problem with the brothers and sisters who are fighting for a better contract and all of those things. We in the WPA have absolutely no problem with them. But we are saying we are not hearing from those people any critique of how the government is spending the little that is getting, and the little that is getting is plenty for we. That's not what we are hearing from the people who are fighting for a better deal from Exxon. We're not hearing, yes, we should be getting more from Exxon, but what we are getting now is, 1,000 times more than we were getting. And secondly, the government is misdistributing what we are getting. We're not hearing that from the people on the other side who are correctly critiquing Exxon. What we hear, certainly what somebody like myself hear all the time, is an emphasis on Exxon and not an emphasis on our government. So we are still beating Raphael Trotman for the contract that he signed. Raphael Trotman signed the contract at a particular time, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We have gone past that. What are we doing now? What is at our disposal to do? You don't negotiate a new contract with the greatest and biggest company in the world overnight. You build up your leverage, because it is leverage that will get you to get some more from Exxon. And part of your leverage is that you have to have a national outlook on international capital. And we don't have a national outlook. And so the WPA is saying it's a matter of emphasis. That we feel that if the emphasis is placed on the government's management of the little we get, we are then able to hold that government more accountable. We are then able to push the government in a certain direction, which will then build up our stocks so that when we sit at the table with Exxon in the future, we are going there with better stocks than we had 5-6 years ago. And so our attitude to the contract is that anybody can say, I am going to renegotiate the contract. Didn't the PPP say that? Have they renegotiated it? Why do we believe that the opposition parties will tell you, no, we're going to negotiate the contract, and when they get in, they will renegotiate it? You got to renegotiate with somebody, Exxon. You have to renegotiate with somebody. You're not negotiating with yourself. And so what we ought to be doing is to building up our stocks. We take what we are getting. We have no choice. And we are getting much more than we are. It's to build up the country stock so that when we sit down in the future, we are able to use the development that we have in our country. We are able to use the national outlook on oil, a national development strategy as it relates to oil and the non-oil aspects of the economy, and then say to Exxon, let's talk. You don't go to Exxon and say, Exxon, let's renegotiate the contract. I promise my people that that's what we're going to do. And expect that that contract will be renegotiated. No. No. And so the WPA is saying that we have to shift the conversation to a common sense conversation. And the conversation is not about attacking the PPP or attacking the PNC, as the case may be. But it's about holding our government feet to the fire and to say the little that you're getting compared with Exxon is a lot compared with what we used to get. Let me get that straight. Because what we are doing when the doom and gloom, that we can't accept that our economy is growing, the GDP is growing. That's a reality. And it's not growing because of the PPP. The PPP will tell you that. But we have to say the GDP is growing in spite of the PPP. Guyana happens to be lucky. That's why the GDP is growing. Not because of the PPP. It's that we are damn lucky. And so we must not be afraid to say that there is growth in our economy. There is growth. That people today are earning a little bit more, but they need to earn 50 times more than they're earning now. But you can't make a sensible argument if you start off with doom and gloom that we don't have development. We don't have growth, sorry. We have growth without development. So the WPA position is not to deny the growth, to accept that we have growth. And because we have growth, there are expectations that go with growth. And we are not seeing the realization of those expectations. So we have growth without development. That is what we have in mind. And that's where we would like the conversation to be. Not to deny that there is growth. Accept that there is growth. And the growth is in spite of the PPP, not because of the PPP. What the PPP is doing, it is not translating the growth into development.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. When St. Jordan tells us that the debt becomes a problem when the borrowing is reckless, then the type of debt being taken, the projects that are being undertaken using loan funds, whether that borrowing is taking place in the context of a medium to long-term development plan. Given our experience in the 70s, 90s, and the numerous failed projects post-1992, it takes a bold person to say, quote, the debt is not the problem.
Well, I rather take that bold step. I mean, I'm not quarreling with Winston because he's an economist and he brings an economist eye to it and so on. I am speaking in the broad political economy from the perspective of broad political economy, that we don't get our people to believe that debt in itself, borrowing in itself, is a bad thing. We all go to the bank to borrow. We borrow money from the bank to build our homes, to start businesses and so on. We don't want our people to believe that borrowing. I agree with Winston, and he may be saying it much more polished than I am, but I think we are saying the same thing. It's not that borrowing could not become a problem, but of course, ultimately, if you borrow and the money you borrow, you're spending it recklessly and you're not getting outcomes, of course. Of course. But I'm saying the problem is not your borrowing. The problem is your management of the economy. It is not that borrowing in the final analysis will not be zeroed in, will not be factored in your failure. But I'm saying we can't beat down the government because it borrows money. It is the reckless spending of the money, as Winston is saying. So I don't think we are disagreeing too much. I'm just trying to say that, look, the areas that we want to tackle this government on, we may get some traction for a day or two if we talk to them on, well, you're borrowing plenty money. And then, they're going to give us the standard answer. We expect money to come in, and so we are borrowing. But if you shift to borrow the money, how spend this money? How I define the borrowing? I think we punch them at a softer spot. And so it's just a matter of emphasis. But I do agree with Mr. Jordan that reckless spending is a bad thing. It does reckless. Borrowing is not money. By proper management and a distribution of what you're borrowing, in the end, the borrowing doesn't make sense. But you don't want to let your citizens believe borrowing is a bad thing, because we all borrow, right? We all borrow.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. It is 28 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. It's the 11th of September, and you're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. Let's take a short commercial break, and when we return, we shall open up the lines.
The People's National Congress Reform presents Emerald Splash, a Georgetown to Linden bus excursion and pool party on Sunday, September 22nd from Congress Place to the Toucan Complex poolside in Amelia's Ward. Music by Hotter Vibe Sound and LT One Man Band. Excursion tickets cost $5,000. Available at Congress Place to Fire. Venue entrance fee $1,000. Buses leave Congress Place at 9 a.m. sharp. It's the Emerald Splash bus excursion and pool party. Let's take a drive and bust a line with the PNCR.
Take a drive and bust a line with PNCR. Emerald Splash, Sunday, September 22nd. Yes, watch this space for more information. But like I said, take a drive and bust a line. But on Friday, the 27th of September, come down here. Come down to Twilight. For Friday Night Laughs with Chow Pow and Jumbie Jones, right? Chow Pow and Jumbie Jones. Come down here for good laughter with Chow Pow and Jumbie Jones. Admission is cheap; it's only $500. But I can tell you, those of you who know Club Twilight, you have to reserve your table quickly. Otherwise, you are left standing somewhere or sitting somewhere without a table. And a night like this, you want to have a table with all your friends so that you can have a good laugh. And of course, there's open mic for the brave. So it's not only Chow Pow and Jumbie Jones entertaining you and those who are here, but if you believe that you have jokes to share and you're brave, then you too can take the mic. It's like the karaoke of comedies, right? It's like a karaoke of comics. So you can come down on the 27th. The doors open at 7 o'clock. Please make your presence felt. And since there was a request for those of you are overseas or right here in Guyana but can't make it to Club Twilight, you have an interest in seeing the show, being a part of the show, I did say that we can do that. We can make that happen. For a fee, we can entertain you via Zoom. We're going to do a two-camera shoot. We're going to ensure that the audio and video are clear and good enough, worth your money. And so professionally, don't let me say that, so that you can enjoy your money's worth. But you will have to communicate with me on that, and so that we know that, hey, you would like to have this service, so we can put the systems in place so that you can be part of Friday Night Laughs on the 27th of September via Zoom. And I'm sure you will enjoy it. Friday Night Laughs is going to be a thing every last Friday of the month at Club Twilight. This is the first one we're going to have. And so the entertainers, I don't want to say the comedians, the entertainers are going to be varied. So this Friday, September 27th, we have Jumbie Jones and Chow Pow. And then October, we're likely to have another two entertainers and so on. And look out also, there's going to be the Christmas market, which will take place. Like we had the Business Expo, we're planning a Christmas market for sometime around the 20th of December, right on the Church of God Road there. And so those of you who have things to exhibit, those of you who are into Christmas crafts and productions and so on, start putting your stuff together, because we want to showcase what is being done, not only in Buxton, but throughout Guyana, and especially among Afro-Guyanese. Carla, thank you for your patience, your life. Carla, your life.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to you and Dr. Hines and all my other Black brothers and sisters in Guyana. Let me say this here. When we fight together, we will win together. Yes, Flash Garden saying that all the time. Mr. David opened my own cancer worm this morning. Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Every Guyanese now in Guyana want to be chief, but they don't want to be Apache. That means everybody want to be president candidates, but they don't want to protest. I got 3 questions for Mr. David. Not personal question, in the line of politics and politics. Because you are a leader, and because from the last time, you and Mr. Nigel, you joined on with my leader, Mr. Abinat from PNC. That garden ain't seen no fruits yet, now no benefit yet. That is why I come to this conclusion to answer these questions, because what is it is not no coalition yet. When the ball is rolling. Now, I could remember when Sharon Duncan came out. You see, I love old news, because old news, you just get all the truth and the facts from it. New news don't give out the facts. And nobody don't pay no mind, but old news now, like Fast God now. I could remember when Sharon Duncan came out and said he will be running for the leadership for his party, AFC. Where you work hard for years. But they come, and he said too, that they want it will be a coalition. But you came and said, oh God, you know, actions speak louder than words. Oh God, Sharon, don't, Sharon, step aside. Oh no, don't do that. Step aside and let Mr. Hughes become leader and automatically president for Guyana. That is one question for you. I want you to explain it, because I'm confused. But because of this coalition is not forming now, I want to know the reason why you mentioned those words. Now, the next question, I believe it was last week. You mentioned and said, oh, by the way, AFC is not a party of protest. But to the other hand, you just come and say, oh, I'll be not. You people them need leadership. I'll be not. You use the largest party for the coalition and you have a big. But then again, you represented AFC. How we want a new voter list? Tomorrow we're going to talk about a new voter list. The last question for you. You mentioned that a young lady approached you and she said, Mr. David, I don't like what Mr. Green did. Well, he did all the wrong thing, but life goes on. We forget it. But the point I'm making, I'm asking you, the last election, she went and she spiled our vote. What explanation did you give to all? The right word is bitter me. But what did you mention to all? What did you let her know if it was right or wrong that she could leave and don't do that nonsense, that calling nonsense again? Because why you must wake up early and go to the vote and spy your vote?
Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, are you morning? It's 25 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. It's Thursday morning. We are going to have Mr. Winston Jordan on, or we should have Mr. Winston Jordan on, to talk about the economy as usual. I allow you to listen to as much as I could have allowed you this morning to yesterday's program. Had a lot of information there for you guys. And so I'm sure that in the course of the day, if it so interests you, you will go and you will be able to look at the on-demand stream. It is right there on my page. You just have to look for it and it will be there. And so you can listen and you can really listen and so on. But how are you doing? How was yesterday? How was last night? How are you make out this morning? What side of the bed are you wake up on this morning? What are you doing to preserve your health? You ensure you stay hydrated? Are you having enough liquids, fluids? Please ensure you do that. It's going to mean a whole lot in this period of heat. Good. Yes, let's just play some bills and then Abigail John, morning. How you do? You know, Abigail is one of them women who just make promises to men and got them waiting. And then they don't turn up. They don't stick with the business that they promise, you know. Like, some of us are always happy, powdered, and waiting. And so when folks like Abigail make us powder and wait, and then we are left high and dry, you know what I mean? It's a botheration thing. Abigail, morning. Good morning to you.
The People's National Congress Reform presents Emerald Splash, a Georgetown to Linden bus excursion and pool party on Sunday, September 22nd from Congress Place to the Toucan Complex poolside in Amelia's Ward. Music by Hot to Vibe Sound and LT One Man Band. Excursion tickets cost $5,000. Available at Congress Place Sophia. Venue entrance fee $1,000. Buses leave Congress Place at 9 a.m. sharp. It's the Emerald Splash bus excursion and pool party. Let's take a drive and bust a line with the PNCR.
Yes, so y'all and show y'all go there to the Emerald Splash. Linden is always a nice place for a good fit. So go to Linden and enjoy yourself. And don't forget, Mr. Jordan, good morning. Hold the line for me, please. Don't forget that the PNCR General Election Fundraiser, the kickoff takes place on the 14th. Right, the 14th is this weekend. Am I right? Yes, the 14th is Saturday. So go out on Saturday at that place with DJ Lennox and so on. Go to Nazareth Hall at 475 East 57th Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11203, and party from 8 till 2 with DJ Team Exclusive and DJ Lennox of Bills International. There's a donation for the dinner and dance and open bar. It's $150. Small things you can afford that. Go out there and support the cause. Good elections cost money. And if we want to win elections, we have to ensure that we raise a whole lot of money, a whole lot of money. Because don't forget that the opponents got access to the public treasury from which they are misappropriating funds. It's the truth. That's all I do. Talk the truth. Mr. Jordan, good morning. It's Thursday morning. How are you, Dubai?
Bright and beautiful in this Dubai. I love that word, man. Guyana, Dubai.
Dubai.
Right? That's Dubai.
Oh, Dubai.
Dubai. It's a pretense. All we're doing is pretending, right? Never able to realize, which is really unfortunate. Is that so?
Of course it is.
It is. Yeah, I have promised this week to do the budget half year.
Yes, the half year report.
Certain events have overtaken that, and
Okay.
I will probably do the budget next week. But these events that have overtaken are very important enough to be brought to the fore, really. And so I will be dealing with them today.
Thank you much.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said thank you much.
Yes. Yesterday when I was listening, you had your favorite caller who was intended to say that your program was achieving nothing for the last 3 years or whatever length of time you were there. And you dealt with them quite adequately and swiftly and correctly. But I wanted to bring two instances where your program has done tremendous help. Only fairly recently when I was dealing with the teachers, I mentioned that in the case of the mathematics, that the government had brought half-baked and quarter-baked measures. That is adding a half an hour more or 2 half an hours more to the maths teaching for a week.
Right.
And I said this was an extremely weak response to what was a crisis. And as you remember, because I think I remember sending you a text, that I think after that program, sometime in the afternoon, Ali was out there announcing for the more intense measures.
Yes.
And since then, even more measures have been announced in relation to improving mathematics in particular. I didn't hear much about the English. But improving maths in particular. And for them to have immediately responded without recognizing the fact that they had poured this on the program and so on, is an indication that the program is serving a useful purpose where the government is concerned. They're getting, in many cases, they're getting free advice, right? Which we have to pull back every now and then because, I mean, once they're getting things free, they're not about to pay for it, right? So they're getting free advice from the very people who they hate or who they don't want to consult, right? So I'm happy that in terms of an approach, even though I still consider the approach to be knee-jerk.
Yeah, I personally, I looked at these announcements. They're coming fast and furious. I think yesterday there was another one, and I'm asking how well thought out are these things? They're heading for failure again.
Hence, I use the word knee-jerk. Right? There's no consideration of the overall problem. There's no diagnosis of that problem. Okay? And hence, it doesn't follow the short, medium, and long-term solutions to that problem. What they're doing today may result in an improvement in the results next year. But and then the following year, it's either maintained or it drops again. Because the reality is they have not done the diagnostic. And quite frankly, if they did, they will see that this problem starts way down to the nursery level. They will see that it falls way down to the nursery level. And I don't think the government itself has a curriculum for nursery. I think every school or that every educational, every play group and so on, they're free to do, I believe, at that level, what they can. So the government has no official curriculum that it puts out there that goes across the board. And even though there's a national curriculum that starts from, I think certainly from grade 1, the government does not have the inspectorate, at least, to ensure that whatever curriculum that is set out is being fulfilled in the entire year, during the entire school year. And if it hasn't, especially when you do this survey across the country, to examine the measures why the curriculum is not being fulfilled. You know, in different regions, it may be due to different circumstances. The curriculum itself might be too intense to be taught in a full year, given the other activities that the school is involved in. And all these things, they need a complete diagnostic. And since that will take some time, you need credible emergency measures. I don't know if you recall that I believe it was in 2018 or 2017. Might have been 2018, but I know definitely under Nicolette Henry, who was the then Minister of Education, that we also faced a crisis in the results of the maths exams.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Right? And we immediately set about to tackle that situation head on. We immediately set about to do so, such that consistently in consecutive years, the maths results had improved. We had moved from, I think, high 20s, 29 or something like that, if I remember well, or low 30s, to into the 40s. And I believe the situation obtained at the time when we demitted office on August the 2nd, 2020. And therefore, what would it take, seeing that we have an emergency again, for them to pick up the phone and call Nicolette, or to talk to people who are involved in that process? There is at least one in Parliament right now, because the unions were brought on board. We didn't leave the unions out, as what is happening right now. In all of these measures that you hear being announced, they never once said they consulted with the unions. They never once said that they consulted with the unions.
You don't even know if they consulted the teachers.
Or even the teachers. Or even the parents.
It's a bottom-down approach a top-down approach as against bottom-up.
That's right. Or even students. You know, I remember at least one of the measures we took was to bring on board former teachers of mathematics. We brought them on board and put them in the system. Now, all these things can help, but when you believe that you are big and you're arrogant and you know everything, you know it all, this is what is going to happen. No consultation, measures are being announced left, right, and center. And you don't even know the grain or the gravity of the situation. Mm-hmm. And one of them made me incensed that they are going to talk to CXC or find out from CXC or something of the sort about their exams and so on. I don't know whether you wrote CXC, Kiraki.
I did.
But I wrote GCE O levels. And you really think we could have said, but we're going to talk to GCE O level London or some other Caribbean Cambridge. Listen, man, we don't like your exam. It's too hard. Right? You set me exams that are too hard for them students and them pass it. I mean, what is this thing about approaching CXC about your exams? That we are stakeholders and we have a right to approach CXC. You have no right to approach CXC. As stakeholders, you got your meetings of the education ministers and whatnot and officials and so on, and there you put your problems. I'm sure CXC is in a thing, but what is it that you're approaching CXC about? The fact in 1 year that students didn't do well? Did they bring stuff in the exam that was not in the curriculum? Did they bring such stuff? If they didn't, then what is it that you're going to be approaching them? The way in which they set the questions? What is it that you're proposing to do? Man, look, take the thing as a given. Because it's the same CXC that was setting the questions all along, and it's the same CXC that reduced their marking and whatever else during the COVID period and immediately after the COVID period. So now they have now become the problem. You know. So that was not my area that I wanted to but I was just going to show you how influential your program has become. Notwithstanding the fact that up to last week I was telling you how well received it was in the diaspora, you know. But an easy segue now is the fact that I was talking about teachers and teaching. And you remember that I did on August the 29th, I believe, and then September the 5th, I did the two-part series on the teachers. You remember, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Now, Sunday gone, last Sunday, the Morar Waves picked up on it and carried an article. Of course, the article trying to put a couple lines in a 3-hour report that I was given, mangled the report, but I gave them credit for actually carrying it and carrying it nationally. That was Sunday morning. By Sunday afternoon, the government had sent out one of its top enros, none other than the minister in the office of the president with responsibility for finance and now the public service, Ashley Singh, sent out him with all guns blazing and firing. And in a newsroom report, Sunday, September 8, 2024, this man accused me of all manner of things. And I crave the indulgence to do the rebuttal of some of these things. Many of these things, of course, we have rebutted before. But if we, I said last time, if we have to rebut it 1,000 times, let's do that. Because it's then and only then that we will show that we are equal to them and that we are not subservient to them. Because these people treat us as if we are insignificant. They treat us as if we don't count. They don't consult the opposition on anything. So we don't count. And they clean themselves as if they are superior to us. So here is this man running out, who at one time at the Ministry of Finance depended on me for advice. Here is this man running out, accusing me, and in essence, abusing me with all manner of things. So in this newsroom report of Sunday, September the 8th, 2024, Ashley Singh accused me of being hostile towards rural communities and the productive sector. Why did he say this? Because in the second part of that article, in trying to debunk fiscal space, I mentioned the fact that fertilizer subsidy was given to the agricultural sector and all manners of other subsidies and duty-free concessions were being given to the agricultural sector, but the same government was failing to tax the income of the sector, because it is perceived that the bulk of the agricultural sector, the people involved here, were perceived to be PPP supporters and followers and admirers and whatever else you want to carry with them. And therefore, I argued, they are the recipients of all the services that this country has to offer, whether it's the roads, D&I, you name it. So who was going to be paying for those services and for the provision of those services? None other than the people who get taxed at source. And these were the public servants, the nurses, the teachers, and so forth. And that because of that, the space was being eroded instead of being widened and allowing for proper salaries to be paid. So he runs out and said, I'm hostile to rural communities. I'm not hostile to rural communities. I'm not hostile to rural communities. More than once I came here and said, I don't like subsidies, but targeted subsidies can be put in place. Targeted subsidies. And if they were transparent, they will tell us the $900 million or $1 billion of fertilizer subsidy that was given last year, who were the beneficiaries of these subsidies? Were they small farmers in Buxton? Were they small farmers in Mocha? Were they small farmers in Tushen? Were they small farmers in Dartmouth? Without even saying what they would put out, I can say a resounding no. That this $1 billion in subsidy that was given last year in fertilizer subsidy was given to favored large producers in the agricultural sector, especially rice, particularly rice. And while I praise the production numbers of rice and so forth, the question is, with that level of increase, meaning that increased income has gone to the agricultural sector, the question is whether the government is prepared to collect the taxes due. Not the imposition of new taxes, but in the context of the existing tax laws, whether they are prepared for GRA to go after, in particular, the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector is a hard sector to tax under normal circumstances. But the solution to that is not to ignore the sector completely when it comes to taxing the income from the sector. And if I remember well, companies in the agricultural sector, to pay productive companies in the agricultural sector, pay only 25% income corporation tax. 25%. And that was put in by the coalition government. So whereas other companies pay 40, 45, and 45% in the banking sector and in the wholesale and distribution sector, productive companies, manufacturing companies, industrial companies, they pay 25%. And that was put in by the coalition government. So, to debunk this nonsense coming from a very educated individual that I was against rural communities is because I am saying to give account, one, of the subsidy, the fertilizer and other subsidies too that were given. Because you had subsidy given to fishermen. You had subsidies given, transfers given to Gaisuko workers, even though the Gaisuko workers had received their severance pay. But you have a large number of other categories of workers who not only don't get these subsidies, but who don't invite similar attention by this government. And they have been variously accused of all manner of things when it comes to these categories of workers. And their intent only is to deal with that small segment of those categories of workers which they deem important enough for them to win elections. And let's call a spade a spade. We're talking here about our indigenous brothers and sisters. The money that is being spent in the indigenous communities, I envy them. Yes, I envy them. But I'm not saying that it should be taken away. Spending is fine, go ahead. But I envy it from the standpoint that communities in Buxton and Muko and Danielstown and Riverstown and Itiko and all these other communities can only sit on the verandas and hope that similar investment can be made in their communities. Billions of dollars are going in there. I remember a couple programs ago, 3 programs ago or so, where I recall reading that the government had gone into a little small community called Muruko. Little small indigenous communities called Muruko. And shared out $100,000 to 2,000 residents. That's according to the news in the papers. Not 2,000 households, 2,000 residents. Kudos to them. $200 million immediately made available to a very small community. And I'm sure a community like Buxton, BV, or so on, far larger than Morocco, will be on top of the world if they got a single investment of $200 million going to 2,000 households in each one of those communities. And so this is what is happening with the Natural Resource Fund money and so on. It's being shared out door in selected communities with an eye to votes next year. So I certainly not against rural communities. I born in one, in any case. I'm not against them. But I'm against anything that smacks of disparity, discrimination, and such like. Then you went on to accuse me of a legacy of mismanagement during my time as APLU's economic czar. All right, I'm not a Russian, but I'm a czar, an economic czar. I will take the appellation, no problem. Accuse me of mismanagement. And in the same vein, he also claimed that my policies exacerbated the cost of living. Do you recall in the 5 years of the coalition, 2015-2019, that we had a cost of living problem? Exactly.
I'm away from you, but no.
Can you imagine accusing me of what? Exacerbating the cost of living? For those who don't know and those who have listened to your programs in the past, let me just recap quickly in terms of economic indicators our performance in that period. In 2015, we had a real good performance of 3.2%. In that year, we were able to lift the minimum wage by 26.5%. And in that year also, the inflation, we had a deflation, not the inflation, we had a deflation, which is the other side, the opposite sign, a negative sign, of 1.8%. In 2016, we had real growth of 3.8%. Minimum wage was increased by 10%. And inflation for that year was 1.4%. In 2017, we had real growth of 3.7%. We lifted wages by 9.1%. And the inflation for that year was 1.5%. In 2018, we had real growth of 4.4%. We were able to improve wages by 7%. and the inflation for that year was 1.6%. In 2019, our last full year in government, real growth was the highest at 5.4%. We were able to lift wages by 9%. And the inflation for that year was 2.1%, the highest for all the 5-year period. So, for the 5-year period 2015 to 2019, average growth was 4.1%, which was consistent with the growth profile of the previous 15 years. Minimum wage was increased by 77%. 77%. And inflation for that 5-year period was less than 1%. Its actual number was 0.96%. Less than 1%. And this man accusing me of exacerbating cost of living. But that is what they are good at. They are good at attacking the messenger instead of dealing with the message. And that message was, there is a lot of waste going on in the government. And if you were able to cut waste by as little as 10%, you will get enough money to pay the teachers. That was my mantra in those 2-part series. But they ran out and they got vexed. They got vexed with the whole issue of waste. He finished. He said, during my term, during my tenure, it was marked by court the imposition of over 200 new and increased taxes, fees, and fines. So it moved from now to, because the mantra was 200 taxes, but now they've added in some things. They actually realized that they can't produce this 200 taxes. So they added in 200 new and increased taxes, fees, and fines. They've now broadened it. So it's no longer 200 taxes. It's 200 new and increased taxes, fees, and fines. Now, I remember coming on this same program and showing that our MP, Annette Ferguson, had asked Ashley Singh the same question and had asked him to produce the evidence of the 200 taxes. And I'm trying to get the exact thing what he said in Parliament. Don't want to misquote him. I'm trying to get the exact thing that he said. Oh yes. And this is what he said in response, in a written response to the Member of Parliament, Annette Ferguson, when asked to produce the 200 taxes, the list of the 200 taxes. This was his response in Parliament. He said, quote, "The list of taxes and fees imposed by the APNU AFC government during the period May 2015 to August 2020 has been extensively reported on and ventilated in the public domain." End of quote. That was his answer to a specific question to list the 200 taxes you continue to talk about. But when given an opportunity to list these taxes, he brought this sterile response. The list of taxes and fees imposed by the APNU AFC government during the period May 2015 to August 2020 has been extensively reported on and ventilated in the public domain. Again, as I said, when you can't attack when you can't deal with the message, You tried to attack the messenger. And then, of course, he had more accusations. He condemned my role in closure of Gaisupo estates. Condemned my role in the closure of Gaisupo estates. Well, of course, I was a member of a cabinet, and in condemning, you condemn the entire cabinet. So, since being a member of cabinet, then I have no problem with condemning my role in that. But look at the gall, the mitigated gall, the unmitigated gall of these people. There was nothing said when the Barajagio administration was closing estates, Diamond Estates, LBI, and all these other estates, and people had to go to court to get this severance and all this kind of story. There was nothing said. There was nothing said by anybody that 2 days after we came to power in May 2015, that the then CEO, who's now the High Commissioner in England, dropped everything and went back to his residence in New Jersey, only for us to find out that Gaisupo was completely broke, had $90 billion in debt, and couldn't pay its wages for the week, for that week coming up. And that we, the coalition government, had to find $12 billion in a short period of 7 months in 2015 to keep Gaisupo afloat. And that such payments, such large payments, continued into 2016 and 2017. And that by the time 4 estates were closed in 2017, at the end of 2017, we had put in over $40 billion, not including the taking over of some of the loss-making parts of Gaisupo, the training center, the community centers, the drainage and irrigation. All these things were taken over by the central government. And ultimately, 5,175 workers, and not 7,000, were severed. But another 8,000 were retained. Over 8,000 were retained. Nobody's saying anything about that. And that is the very government that went and get a 30 billion bond. 30 billion bond. To continue the existing estates, the 3 estates that would have existed, and B, to put the closed estates in a position to privatize them. You hear how when the government come in, they make mileage of how the things were left to rot. They weren't left to rot. Soon thereafter, we had set up a unit in the NISIL, an SPU, a sugar privatization unit, was set up in NISIL. And through an open process, tendering process, we hired, I think this Price Waterhouse, to come in and do the evaluation, and so on. And had produced an initial report that went to cabinet. And then came the no countenance motion in December of 2018. And it became very clear that nothing could have been privatized during that time. Because even those who had expressed interest, major interest in the privatized entities, had walked away. Like anybody would do in such circumstances. And since we weren't expecting to be holding on to those closed estates for any lengthy period of time, given the resources, financial resources, the limited financial resources that we had available, you had that situation now where, in the absence of funding to keep all the estates going in a viable position, that some of them deteriorated over time. But the long and short is, between 2015 when we came in and this year, Gaisuko has been the recipient of over $100 billion from the Treasury. Over $100 billion. And instead of getting better, it's getting worse. All the promises about opening back the estates, where has that gone? Where has that gone? And this year's half year, the most dismal in the history of Gaisuko, of just about 6,700 tons of sugar, how could that justify $100 billion over the last couple of years? If you had taken that same money and distribute among the workers and allow them to go into new activities, new training, new this, new that, and so on, won't we have been better off today? And then since there is no end, no light at the end of the tunnel of this wasting of money, yes, wasting of money, by continuing throwing more and more money. Listen, on this program, I also brought in concepts of like too big to fail and so on. And that is Gaisuko. Gaisuko is one of those entities that is too big to fail. And it's a moral hazard. There is no accountability. There's no sanctions in Gaisuko. If Gaisuko fails, there's no sanctions. So there's no compunction. There's no drive to achieve. If Gaisuko fails, the government will come in and bail it out from the treasury. And once government has to bail out Gaisuko from the treasury, it means the fiscal space has narrowed, because monies that should have been identified for other purposes, including payment to teachers and nurses and doctors and so on, now have to be diverted to keep an ailing industry alive. And that has happened from 2015 to now. 9 years on, and Gaisuko is in a worse position than it probably was in 2015. It can only limp and produce 6,700 tons of sugar at the half year. And every request for a plan that will put Gaisuko in a sustainable position has been rebuffed in Parliament and out of Parliament. And we sit here and talk about condemning rolling closure of Gaisuko. And we sit there and listen to the government say about how being a fiscal space to pay teachers more than 10%. But meanwhile you saying that, in this year alone, you would have transferred over $10 billion to Gaisuko. More than 10 billion, but I don't have the figure, but I know it's more than 10 billion. Whereas a 20% increase in the teachers' rate will, using Jagdale's numbers of $40 billion, will be a mere $8 billion. And the one that took the cake, of course, he accused me of mismanaging state assets, including the undervalued sale of prime waterfront property. Now, in early 2021, the Attorney General sued me, Calvin Heath Landon, BK, and I believe the Deeds Registrar, in a civil action for sale of waterfront property to BK. They sued me civilly. This matter was heard and a judgment was delivered by Justice Bassington Reynolds, I think around September of 2022. in which the justice, the Honorable Justice, struck down every contention made by the Attorney General, every single one. And ultimately, he called it an abuse of the court process. He then awarded me and BK $2 million each for costs. Mr. Brassington then became the subject of vile commentary. And the AG appealed the matter to the full court. And a judgment handed down by Justices Joanne Barlow and Sandil Kisu. They struck out the appeal, accusing the AG of being a meddler and awarding a further $2.5 million in costs to BK. I didn't get it because I didn't file a response to the AG's appeal. He has now appealed to the appeal court, and that's where it's at the moment. In December of the same 2021, I was charged criminally with the same matter. And in 2023 May, the magistrate dismissed the charge. Unknowing to me, the DPP went to the High Court, to the Chief Justice, to get an order to commit me to stand trial in the High Court for the same matter. And in February of this year, the DPP handed down her decision and dismissed the DPP's application, finding that there was not an iota of evidence of any wrongdoing on my part. And as you know, I have sued the government. I have sued the government represented by the AG. I've sued the DPP. And I've sued the two officers connected to this case, police officers, who arrested me and who swore to the charge in court. The matter is progressing, and my next court date is November the 28th.
So do you know we suing Ashley Singh?
Well, this is what I was going to say to you. That Mr. Ashley Singh should know, should consult his lawyers on matters to do with libel and defamation of character. In every instance, I have been vindicated in the court. Mr. Ashley Singh must also note that every time you point a finger, how many more is pointing back at you? 4 more. Is that right?
So that's it. If you exclude the thumbs.
Yes. 4 more fingers are pointing back at you. Mr. Ashley Singh seems to forget that, as reported in Kaitor News, April the 13th, 2018, quote, I'm quoting from the Kaitor News of April 13th, 2018, quote, Months after SOCO completed its Pradoville 2 investigation, it instituted charges yesterday, and that would have been April the 12th, 2018. It instituted charges yesterday against former Finance Minister Dr. Ashley Singh and former Chief Education Officer of NISIL, Winston Brassington. The two were jointly slapped with 3 charges of misconduct, 3 charges each of misconduct in public office, as these related to 3 plots of state land. End of quote. Pointing fingers at me. When you live in glass house, what is that? Don't throw stones, right?
Absolutely not.
No. After they were charged, Singh and Brassington challenged the legality of the charges, noting that their positions specifically excluded them from being considered or described as public officers under the Constitution. However, on November the 25th, 2019, Chief Justice Acting Roxanne George Wilshire dismissed their challenge and ruled that they must face the charges. Okay? So they were charged by SOCO, just like me, went before a magistrate. But they didn't wait for the magistrate to conclude the matter. They went to the High Court. So the magistrate would have had to pause the continuation. They went to the High Court. And then a year after they were charged, Justice Wilshire handed down her decision that dismissing whatever they challenge and send the matter back to the magistrate court. So this matter was pending in the magistrate court and perhaps going on or whatever, until, as reported in Kaitol News, December the 15th, 2020, quote, the misconduct in public office charges against Finance Minister Dr. Ashley Singh and Head of Gas the Shore Task Force Winston Brassington yesterday had charges withdrawn against them by the DPP. And everybody remember that. The DPP null-pros charges against Ashley Singh, Winston Brassington, Anil Nanlal, and Orphan Ali. That is public knowledge. Null-pros means withdraw, discontinue, and so on. And this is what Maurice Odell, in his recent book, An Eventful Life, did you obtain a copy?
No, I didn't.
All right, I have a copy. This is what he said in his recent book, An Eventful Life. He stated that it was regrettable that the DPP, who herself was a recipient of Pradoville 2 property, withdrew the charges against Ashley Singh and others, instead of allowing them to have their cases tried in court and possibly win and enjoy vindication, just like me. I didn't have a godmother at the DPP office, nor did I depend on one. I know myself, I believed in myself, and every soul under this earth knew they were trumped up charges for a particular purpose. So I didn't have to ask if the inconvenience was great. The cost was great because you have to employ lawyers and all the time and so on. And of course, as me like in Guyanese said, the shame. But I endured all of that and have been vindicated by every court that they took the matter to. Because I have nothing to worry about. I don't have anything to worry about. Not one. But I await my day in court now with the hearing of the lawsuit I've brought against them. And this was not the first time that Ashley Singh had met brushes with the law. This was not the first time. According to iNews, February 13, 2015, under the headline, government spending of $4.5 billion was unconstitutional, says Chief Justice rules. The headline was, government spending of $4.5 billion was unconstitutional, Chief Justice rules. And here now I'm quoting. Acting Chief Justice Ian Chang on Friday, December the 13th, 2015, ruled that Finance Minister Dr. Ashley Singh acted outside the law when he spent $4.5 billion from Guyanese Treasury, although the National Assembly had disapproved spending of the monies. Can you believe this? The legislature had disapproved spending of the particular charge of accounts that had been brought to the Assembly by Ashley Singh, the then Minister of Finance. It is clear that if the legislature disapproves of the expenditure, you can't continue with that expenditure in whatever guise that you may wish to do. Otherwise, there is no basis for the legislature to approve anything. It will just be a perfunctory action of carrying a budget to the legislature and allow it to approve. But when it's disapproved, you could continue, go ahead and spend anyhow because, hey man, forget them guys there. So this is essentially what happened. Parliament disapproved, and the executive said, to hell with you. I can approve anyhow. Them same expenditure that you disapprove, I can go ahead. And the Chief Justice ruled that such action was unconstitutional. The decision from the Chief Justice was part of a ruling made in a case brought before the High Court by leader of the opposition, David Granger, accusing the Finance Minister and Attorney General Anil Nandlal in aiding the unauthorized spending of the more than $36.7 billion, which was disapproved in the National Assembly. So, yes, there's something to be said when you pointing fingers at people and you're accusing them. Make certain that you are like Caesar's wife, above board. Above board. And if you're a man and you got them thing, don't laugh at the other man who got a bigger thing.
We hear still.
Yes, I do.
like you're waiting for explain the things you're talking about.
No.
Because not everybody understand the thing you're talking about. Old people say if you get seen a laugh, go the man.
You see, I waited for you to say you got the nice Buxtonian countryman way of putting things with tongue man.
Yeah.
Tongue man is that. No. And of course, what will be an abusing of people without talking about signing bonus? $18 billion signing bonus. Accuse me of I don't want them to claim that I put words in the mouth. I look into the exact words that he said. But he accused me of signing bonus, accused me of hostile mismanagement. Right, and they accused me about signing bonus story, right? Signing bonus. Now, what do I have to say? Isn't it a couple days ago? Yes, accused me of questionable handling of a hefty signing bonus. Right? Now, I don't need to spend much time on this because it was right here on this program, I think 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, where I made lengthy presentation and explanations And I also, and if you want, you can put it back up on the screen, I provided the receipts showing that not only the 18 million US was transferred, but that 18 million plus interest of, I think, I can't remember so much, because I don't have the figures here,
I think
but you have the receipts.
400,000 plus, I think.
400,000, almost 500,000 US was transferred. Those receipts show the account, the name of the account that was in Bank of Guyana, the fact that Bank of Guyana invested that amount in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. That's where the Bank of Guyana holds the reserves of this country, the entire reserves of this country. And it's also where the Natural Resource Fund is held, right? The Natural Resource Fund account that was opened by the very coalition government, the account that they are using and raiding right now. That is also where the funds are being held. Okay? So accusing me of mishandling hefty sums, hefty signing bonus holds no credibility or holds anyone. But it's on this very program also. I asked some questions that we are the recipients of a huge 750, or we will be the recipients of a huge 750 million US dollars in carbon credits that we have signed with HES. And to date, including this year, over 200 and about 50 million, approximately 250 million of that amount has been transferred or handed over to the government. But then you ask the average person here if they know about this amount of money, and they will tell you no, never heard about it. So I would like to ask the goodly minister, where is this money? Is it in Bank of Guyana? Is it in New York? Is it in Maryland? Is it in Dubai? Is it in China? Where is this money? If it's in Bank of Guyana, what is the name of the account? Can you provide a public statement of account of deposits and withdrawals? Can we trace the withdrawals? Where did these withdrawals go? Because I heard something, I was reading up back and it says, oh, when we withdraw the money, we put it in the consolidated fund. Well, Mr. Ashley is saying, when you withdraw the money, what do you do with the foreign currency that you're withdrawing? Do you sell it to Bank of Guyana? Do you sell it to commercial banks? Who do you sell this foreign currency to? If you sell it to Bank of Guyana, why is it not being reflected in dramatically improved or increased reserves of the central bank? If the account is at central bank, who are the signatories to this account? Who are the signatories? All of these should be public knowledge. Where is this money? If you say that you're putting this money in the consolidated fund, how can we identify this money in the estimates of expenditure? What projects are being funded by these sums of money? Has there been an audit by the Auditor General of the account? If so, where can I find this audit in the audit? So there are many questions. All the questions that you were asking about the 80 million have been found and answered comfortably. But where are the audits of this 200-something million US dollars that has already been transferred from HIS to the government of Guyana? So again, it is good to point. I'm not saying don't point your finger and get credible explanation. But four are pointing back at you. And we are asking for the same credible, transparent information on these sums of money. And of course, I'm not going to go back again reminding you of the Petro-Carib account that contained over $1 billion that accumulated over $1 billion but which at the time when we came to power in May of 2015 had a mere $800,000 in it. But those are facts. Those are facts. And we have not had explanations for those facts. But you know what? These people's belief that they're superior to us. They're superior to us. And they pontificate and look down upon us and accuse us of all manner of things. And for the most part, we are guilty, not of the things, but not responding. And not responding in a timely manner to the inaccuracies and all the others and the misinformation that they put out there. And so people begin to look at us, as they say, funny. Or in Guyanese parlance, they begin to look at us cross-eyed. And then, of course, that same Sunday, perhaps not satisfied with the big man he sent out, it was Ali himself who, around 7:30 or thereabout in the night, and who didn't perhaps had a chance to put on his nice fancy suit that he's accustomed to wearing, rushed out on a live broadcast while we all were quiet with our families, contemplating the week that gone by, looking forward to the new week. Rushed out at about 7:30 in the night on a live broadcast on Facebook and NCN, I heard, with his jersey, with the late, great Muhammad Ali prominent on it, to continue or to expand on where his goodly minister and the absolute president with the responsibility for finance and public service left off. No, I'm not going to waste my time going through every point of his half hour broadcast. I'm not going to waste my time. But I plucked out a couple because at that hour of the night, sir, he was intending to lecture to us, the people of this country, about the expenditure profile of the coalition government in the era of non-oil, with that of the PPP government in the era of oil. Yes. At that hour of the night, he was proposing to stage a match between an ant and an elephant and wanted us as his stage. But I didn't listen. But repeated calls during the week, man, and they keep sending me this broadcast and blah. Man, you got to respond. Man, you got to respond. Man, you got to respond. And that is what killed my today thing. But he was attempting to take me and the coalition government to task for accusing his government of wasteful expenditure. Look, let me make this point up front with that. All governments got some level of waste taking place. Because once you are doing projects that didn't go through feasibility studies, viability studies, environmental studies, and whatever studies, to prove that those projects are worthwhile, they may be pet projects, but they may not be viable. But once you go through that and the projects prove to be not viable and you continue them, it's a waste. It's a wasteful expenditure. And you have many other attempts at wasteful expenditure you could explain. So let me put it up front. We have wasteful expenditure in coalition government, and all governments got wasteful expenditure. To deny that you don't have wasteful expenditure is to deny and is to deny that tomorrow will not come, or some such other incredible or incredulous happening. All governments got wasteful expenditure. The key to that is to minimize the waste, to make it as small as possible. So when you are going to come out at 7:30 on Sunday night to talk about expenditure profile of a non-oil coalition government spending versus an oil PPP spending, and then you are trying to defend some issue that you don't have waste in your government, one has to answer that in its proper sense. And so now, it starts off by talking about, or not start, or somewhere in the broadcast, he was mentioned how much money we spent on dietary. Dietary. Of all the things you can think about, Kedaki, the man was talking about dietary. And there is a subliminal message when he talks about dietary. Because that message has been repeated by all of the people who follow the PPP. Not all. Let me pull it back. By many of the people who follow the PPP. But it is inbred, in particularly their leaders, when they're talking about dietary spending in the budget estimates, especially under coalition government. And the subliminal message is easy to read. It was none other than Jagger himself who proffered the reason why opposition MPs go to parliament. So when they come with dietary, this subliminal message is there. We like food. We like food. We like we belly, and so on. So it is there to give the message as if the coalition was eating its way out of the treasury. So I just want to put some quick numbers in the public domain. In 2018, the dietary expenditure was $4,622,000,000. Of that expenditure, 97.8% was spent in the following areas. It was spent in the education sector, in the public health sector, in prisons and the army, and in the palms and child care. And I remember you talking, I think this a couple of days ago, about what is happening right now at the palms. Did you?
Yes, I did.
97.8% of the expenditure in 2018 on the dietary was spent as follows. Palms, $143.8 million. Childcare, $53.5 million. Under the Ministry of Education, $1,848,000,000. $1,848,000,000 under the Ministry of education. Under public health, this is not the regions, but just public health. It was $82 million. In terms of regions 1 to 10, in the education sector, the dietary was $694.5 million. In terms of regions 1 to 10 in the health sector, the dietary was $244.4 million. Prisons, the dietary was $397 million. And the Army, $1,040 million. For a total sum when you add up all of $4,500 million, roughly thereabout. And when you do the percentage, it's 97.8%. So in 2018, 97.8% of the dietary budget, dietary expenditure went to those critical areas. A mere 2.2% in dietary was used, and 2.2% of $4,622 million will leave you roughly about let me see, make a quick 8 to 1, roughly 100 million there, about 100 million, 100 million was used to spend in all the other budget agencies of the government sector. All the other agencies of the government sector. So they put out that message about dietary, the subliminal message, when in fact we are feeding the people who we have to feed as a government, whether they be school children, whether they be patients in hospitals, whether they be prisoners, whether it be the army, the people in the palms. What it is that we have to cut expenditure, those people? Already those expenditure might have been at the bone anyhow, given the level of expenses we had. In 2019, that dietary expenditure went up to $5,166 million. And again, 97% of that expenditure was spent in those areas I just identified. $144.7 million went to the palms. 48.1 million went to child care. $2,012 million went to the Ministry of Education, not including the regions. 118.5 billion went to the public health, not including the regions. For regions 1 to 10, education sector, 928 million of the dietary was expended there in the schools and so on. In regions 1 to 10, in the health sector, $270.7 million was used in dietary in the hospitals and the health centers and whatnot. In the prisons, $519.1 million was used for dietary. And in the army, $953.2 million was used for dietary. For a combined total of, that will give you 97% of the audited of the realized expenditure of $5,166 million for 2019. So it is, we have to always pay attention, because it is more than just a meet the eye. And of course, he also talked about APNU pay themselves 50% increase. This is the last one I'm going to deal with, because I'm running out of time. And
take time, Mike. Take time. We got time. You take time.
APNU pay themselves 50%. Of course, as I said, throw stones and red herrings. Throw stones and red herrings. When you can't beat and hit the message Now, before I get to the 50% current, let me give you a piece of antecedent that you perhaps never knew before. So when the PPP came to power in 1992, after being out of power for 28 years, of course, everybody wanted a piece of the action. So it wasn't too long before they started grumbling about the salary. Don't let them fool you. Grumbles had started on the salary, but because Dr. Jagan came in with his mean, clean, and lean, nobody dared approach Jagan about increasing minister's salary. But it didn't mean that they continued grumbling, but they probably grumbled outside the earshot of Jagan. Jagan died in 1997. Heinz took over them couple months, them 9 months, and the disputed elections brought Janet Jagan. But Janet Jagan was like her husband. So they couldn't also go to Janet Jagan about any salary increase. And of course, Janet left office in August of 1999, and in comes Bar Jagdeo. Now again, remember I tell you the salary thing was brewing since 92. 7 years now the salary thing brewing. And Jagdeo is aware of it because Jagdeo was Junior Minister of Finance, then he was Senior Minister of Finance, now he's President. And in 1999, Jagdeo is faced with 2 arbitration tribunal awards. 2 arbitration tribunals. The Malcolm Rodriguez arbitration on teachers and the Aubrey Armstrong for public servants. So he dare not touch salaries of ministers. What do you think he did? And which escaped the eyes of the public. And I don't know, the only reason perhaps it escaped the eyes of the public because I have a feeling it might have not have been gazetted. But these things, when it comes to ministers, because ministers are constitutional post holders, these matters have to be gazetted. So I don't know how it can catch the eye. So instead of increasing the salaries of ministers, Jagdeo increased the vacation allowance of ministers. On December the 28th, 1999, in a memo to the clerk of the National Assembly, the then Secretary to the Treasury, Carol Hebert, advised of the approval given for vacation allowance for ministers to be increased from $240,000, which was equivalent to 1 month's salary, to $420,000, effective January 1, 2000. You see how stones get thrown at other people and other people's story get buried?
Yeah.
I bet you nobody didn't know about that. A 75% increase was approved by the new president, Jagdeo, a mere 3 months after he arrived in there. He arrived in there early August, I think it was August 2nd or 4th or 5th or something like that. September, October, November, December, 4 months. 4 months after he approved of a 75% increase in vacation allowance. It would have been the first time in the history of this country, in the public service, or in the non-public service, that your vacation allowance exceeded your salary. And it was only for one categorization of people, ministers. You're accusing we? You're accusing the coalition ministers. When you had a separate category of increase for your own ministers in the vacation allowance, a 75% increase 4 months after you went into office. And you're accusing us. I tell you about this thing about Mayor Pine Thomas Fingers is Pine back. And remember, this increase was only, so after the ministers got, them parliamentary secretaries also get fixed. And so what happened to be? So on December the 5th, 2005, almost a year afterwards, the then HPS wrote to the clerk of the National Assembly, Lunchon, advising that vacation allowance of parliamentary secretaries were to be increased by 75%, effective May 17, 2005. And then, of course, since you see how this thing is operated, opposition leader and is got the same, and speaker will get the same emoluments as a senior minister. Now you increase the vacation allowance of the ministers. But guess what? You don't increase the allowance, the vacation allowance of the opposition leader. So he also decided he will complain. And no, I'm sorry, so just me backtrack a little bit. So December the 5th, it was the letter to the National Assembly by HPS to increase the parliamentary secretaries by 75%. And another letter was sent on May the 17th, 2005. Okay? Advising the clerk of the National Assembly of the increase in the vacation allowance of opposition leader, who was Robert Corbyn at the time, by 75%. It wasn't done on the 28th, 1999 when they were increasing ministers. Everybody had to go and make their own representation, even though the emoluments of a minister, a senior minister, should be the same emoluments of the speaker and the leader of the opposition. You see how things happen? So I hope that is an antecedent to this whole issue about salaries. And I'm not dealing right now with the merits or whether it should have gone or choose it. It happened, but I'm giving you the antecedents of this whole issue about salary increase. So he said we give ourselves 50% increase. And I dealt with this matter before. Let me deal with it again. 13 ministers of the coalition, 13 senior ministers of the coalition government got a 50% increase in the salaries that was obtained at May 2015. 13 ministers, senior ministers, got an increase in salary that moved their salaries from $579,951 in May 2015 to $869,927 in July 2015. Let me state up front, the increase was one-off, and as such, no further increase was granted, allowed, or any such in the 5+ years that the coalition was in government. No further increase. The speaker, only one speaker, he got the same 50% increase. The prime minister, one of them, he got a 10.7% increase, moving his salary from $1,549,389 to $1,715,000. 9 junior ministers were granted a salary increase of 20%, moving their salaries from $579,951 to $695,541. The Attorney General, one who gets a tax-free salary at that time of $1,630,935, was granted a 5% increase that moved him to $1,712,485. The chief whip, one, got $198,694. He or she would get a 12.5% increase of $223,530. 40 parliamentarians, those will include on the coalition side and on the opposition side, the 30 on the opposition side, because they had 31 seats, but no, they had 32 seats. 32 seats, yes, they had 32 seats, and so one would have been the opposition leader, and he would have got the same 50% increase as the senior minister, the 13 senior ministers. But the parliamentarians were given 20% increase, moving their salaries from $166,843 to $200,211. Of course, the leader of the opposition, his salary was increased by 50%, from $579,951 to $869,927. The deputy speaker, one, that salary was increased from $198,694 to $200,211. There were 3 vice presidents, Guyanese, Ramjatan, and Ali Khan. There was no salary scale obtained at May 2015, and a salary scale was put in, so they got $927,922. Okay, $922,922. Right? Now, of course, political mileage was to be made of this increase. And going back to Demerara Waves, Tuesday, 20th October 2015, under the headline, PPP will reverse salary increases if it wins next elections, and it wants all MPs to prove their earnings. And here's a quote from that article. Quote, opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo Monday night vowed to reverse the hefty salary increases to ministers if his People's Progressive Party wins the next general elections. Says Jagdeo, quote, when we win the elections, we may very well do that. If we are opposed to it now, we'll reverse it, he told Demerara Waves Online News. Maintaining that the 50% increase in ministers' salaries was unconscionable, the former president said none of the PPP parliamentarians will be taking the pay hike. We are not taking the salary increase, he said. We are opposed to it. We don't want it, he said. What has been reality? There was a lot of, they went to the clerk in that assembly. The clerk told them, no, it cannot happen. Then, I think they went public with some story about opening some bank account and asking their parliamentarians to deposit the increase into that bank account. But let me tell you something. Three opposition parliamentarians told me they're not giving up any increase. They said to me, he said the problem they got with me is that the increase is too small. The increase is too small because remember I tell you they got a 20% increase.
Yes.
Right? One then said, oh God, you're going to give you a little more. But he said to me, he's not giving up any salary increase. And he had other things to say. to the effect that his leader was getting a hefty pension, which he gave himself, and I will come to that just now, which he gave himself, but them there on this little pittance that they said they get it and they wanted. Yes, that was told to me. So there was that you were talking about giving back. If they when they get or when they get that into power. But what has been the reality? What has been the reality? Instead of giving back, post August the 2nd, 2020, they took more. They took more. So Ali was on the TV on Sunday night claiming that unlike the coalition who paid themselves 50%, they only took the increase that they gave to the public servants.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if they had taken the increase that they gave to public servants and based on what Jack Dio had said, they should have taken that 23.1%, which is what they've given the public servants on their salary obtaining at August the 2nd, 2020. They should have taken that 23.1% on the $579,951. Because Jack Dio said they are going to give back, if they get back into power, they are going to give back the 50%. But what has been reality? Indeed, they have taken the entire increase that they have given to the public servants. But on the salary that they met at August the 2nd, 2020, and the salary they met at August 2020 had in the various increases that I called out just now. So what does it look like today? The speaker gets $1,070,880, which is the exact salary of a senior minister. So they've moved from $869,927 that they met in 2020 to now $1,070,880.
And I bet that doesn't include all the allowances and perks.
No, I'm just talking salary. I can't deal with allowances, partner.
Very well.
I'm just dealing only with gross salary. Nothing else. Nothing else. No 25 different allowances that are paid and so on. No. Just salary. The Prime Minister, whose salary at August 2020 was $1,715,000, is now getting $2,111,165. Right? Of course, I told you the senior ministers now getting $1,070,880. The junior ministers, whose salary was $695,541, they are now getting $856,211. The Attorney General, whose salary was $1,712,485 at August 2020, is now getting a tax-free salary of $2,108,069. Right? So he is a mere, he's getting a mere $2,000 something in terms of salary less than the Prime Minister. $2,000 something less. But in actuality, it's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the Prime Minister, because you have to gross up his non-taxable salary to make it comparable with the Prime Minister, if you want to make a comparison between the Prime Minister's salary and his salary. Okay? And you have all the others. The others of consequence is the Vice President, who is now getting $1,142,272. Right? That's up from the $927,922 that was obtained in 2020. The President himself, in that whole fight, President Granger got zero increase. Zero. zero. But over the 4-year period to date, of which salary increases started 2021, the now president has got a 23.1% increase in his salary. So he is getting around $2.7 million a month. So when they run out there and they keep bawling about the tech 50%, let us remind ourselves again. 13 senior ministers got 50% increase. That is the only 50 you can relate to. 13. All the rest got the varying percentages that I talked about. But remember I told you that there was these opposition MPs at that time opposition, who had said to me, man, we're not giving up no increase, that I should have given them more. So I went to the Hansard. I went to my Hansard, and I was able to retrieve this very useful information. It's contained in the Hansard of the 52nd sitting that was held on the 9th of December 2016. The Hansard is an accurate record of parliamentary proceedings that are held by the National Assembly. Right? Okay. Now, recognizing that general elections were upcoming in 2006 because Jagdeo came to power in 1991 August, sovereign out the balance of the term of Janet Jagan. And then elections were June 2001, they were held, and the next election June 2006. All right? So, recognizing that elections were coming up in 2006, Jagdeo caused to be introduced and passed what was called the Pensions President Bill 2004. Let's see what prior to that bill was obtained. Prior to that bill, you had what was called the Former President's Benefits and Other Facilities Bill. And this bill catered for former presidents and prime ministers, right? So that bill catered for the pensions and benefits of former presidents and prime ministers. And as you could see already, the new 2004 bill was exclusive to the president, not to the prime minister. Not to the prime minister. Now the old bill, the old former president's benefits and other facilities bill, says that the pension that the former president shall receive a tax-free pension equivalent to 7/8 of the salary at the time of him or her demitting office. So if you demit office at $200,000, your pension is automatically 7/8 of that $200,000 as a former president, right? Now, in 2006, when Jagdeo's first real term would have come to an end, his salary would have been $223,783. $223,783. And if you took 7/8 of that, you'll only get $195,810. So, not taking anything for granted, as to whether you will get re-elected or so on, Jagdeo preempted by causing this new pensions president bill to be introduced and passed in Parliament in 2004. Now, instead of this new bill prescribes that instead of a president getting 7/8 of the salary at the time he demitted office, he will now get 7/8 of the current salary of the current president. So can you imagine if the current president's salary is roughly 2.7 million, roughly approximately 2.7 million, he will get 7/8 of that. Not 7/8 of the salary that he left how many years ago, because he would have left in 2011. That would have been 13 years ago. And you can imagine what would have been the salary 13 years ago compared to what it is today. He caused the bill to be changed, called the Pensions President Bill, to now reach 7/8 of the current salary of the current president. So in effect, he is getting a pension based on a salary, based on adjusted salary that he never worked for. I say adjusted salary because if you come out at 200,000, your salary may be adjusted for salary increases and so on, then your pension is recalculated. It may, I said may, there's no guarantee that you will get the same salary, the same adjustment to your pension that the public servants get. There's no guarantee of that. There's no rule that says that. But that in any case, from time to time, you will get the same salary increase. So he ain't taking that chance. No, he taking that chance. He gets 7/8 of the current salary. But you think he finished there? No, he finished there. He is not finished there. Remember, I told you his salary was $223,783 in 2006. At the time when Jagdo demitted office in 2011, his salary had shot up to $1,304,503. So he was getting $223,783. 7/8 would give you $195,000 plus. But by 2011, 5 years afterwards, his salary had shot up to $1,304,503. An astonishing 500% increase in 5 years.
What was responsible for that except greed?
Only the good Lee Jagdeo could explain. But what I'm telling you is that he figured if I go in at 223,783 and I just get adjusted by them Margo across the board that I give to them public servants, what will I get by the time I give it office in 2011? No. I think one explanation he said was that his salary, the president's salary, was well below people like the chancellor and the chief justice, and in order to bring them in line or something, hence that kind of adjustment. But wait a minute, isn't that the same thing Granger said about the adjustment in salaries to the ministers? That there were so many public servants, who were getting, and chief justice and chancellor, all the different people who were getting way above the ministers and so on. I'm not saying whether the explanation is valid or invalid or whatever the case may be. I'm just merely saying how it is good for some. It's good for them who preen themselves and who put themselves above with us. But it's not good for us. Not good for them. Right? And we're going to make a meal of them. Nobody in 2011 made a meal of the fact that this man's salary had increased by 500%. None. Nobody did. In that same period, 2006 to 2011, the minimum wage was increased from $26,069 in 2006 to $35,657 in 2011. The minimum wage was $26,069 in 2006. And it was increased by a mere $9,600 in 5 years. $9,600 in 5 years. or a paltry 37.5% in 5 years. So one man gets 500% increase in that same 5-year period, while public servants get a 37.5% increase in the same 5-year period. So whereas in 2006, the president's salary was 8.58 times the minimum wage, by 2011, it was 36.58 times the minimum wage. And as a result, today, them 3 ex-PPP presidents, Jagdeo, Hines, and Ramatar, is costing the Treasury about $85 million annually in pensions.
Wow.
Just them three are costing the Treasury $85 million in pensions annually. And they're talking about coalition government. And we give ourselves 50% increase. And we're not doing like them. We only taking the increase that public servants get. And yet, you had your own leader. You're taking key from your own leader. You have your own leader who promised to remove the 50%, but never did. And then, of course, he tried to justify the focus on infrastructure, physical infrastructure, as against human infrastructure. But that is another story. Because for me, this government believes that development in infrastructure, that it will bring automatic wealth to people or automatically improve their standard of living or their lives or so on. But already you're seeing the reality is infrastructure is built, bring wealth to the contractor class and to those businesses that will have access to that infrastructure. Where is the concomitant prioritization of the human infrastructure? Salaries, wages, other benefits, training, and all these things. Where is the concomitant human infrastructure development? I would leave it at that. But I hope that I have been able to put in the public domain some of the duplicity that has taken place. And that people, either knowing or unknowingly, seek to vilify a coalition government that didn't have oil revenues, but saved this country from going under after inheriting a broken economy in 2015. And yet the numbers speak for themselves. And the people, many of them who have short memories, and some of them on our side who have very short memories, in not recognizing, for example, what we did on the wages side. That's why today they're complaining about us. We give away wages and so on. The wages that went up on the income tax side, what we gave to them, removing taxes from the NIS, all these things. People tell you about something about youth and all this kind of story. Go, I will do a program on that maybe next week on what we were able to do on youth. All these things. But Kodaki, I think I've done my part for today.
Mr. Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much. You've heard Mr. Jordan. I quite frankly, these are one of the days where I would sit back, and I guess I'll be doing it tomorrow also. To what I should say, surrender the platform to all of the information that is available. I'm sure Mr. Jordan has a lot more to say on these particular issues, but of course, in the interest of time, let me tell you what I'm disappointed about, though. We have over 1,000 persons looking at today's live. I'll stick with me. Over 1,000 persons looking at today's live. You know how many shares the program has? Huh? You don't have to go into your pocket to share anything. Certainly not the live. You go into your pocket to share to the Cash App and Zelle. You don't have to go to your checkbook. It is not going to cost you money. It is not even going to cost you an ounce of blood. As a matter of fact, not a drop of blood. To click share. More than 1,000 persons looking. 36 likes. 36 share. 36 share. 36. 36. Let me go to some maths so y'all could understand our feelings. And I see people talking about that was the failure of the coalition, the PR didn't good and so. 0.036. 0.036. 3.6% of the people who were watching this program this morning shared it. Well, Mr. Amsterdam, this is a good program. We got to keep, you must keep replaying it. Oh, Mr. Amsterdam, Mr. Jordan is all right. Oh, here, you see where your money going? What are you people really doing? Honestly. Y'all talk to me. What else can we do from this end where we are doing it? I want to know. I want to know. How do we get the information out? How do we educate the populace? Because like I keep saying, education is supposed to change attitude. We said the Guyanese ain't doing nothing but this wicked and stinking and thieving government. But somebody pointed out something on the program this morning. The young Guyanese, they are not going to Gaisuko to work. They ain't cutting cane. And so the possibility is some of them are finding themselves in the public service where they are being oppressed, just like the majority African Guyanese in the public service. And so when they hear these bits and pieces of information, they're likely to stop and listen and think. And maybe a time will come when they will put the ethnic biases aside and do what they have to do to get rid of this wicked and stinking government. But how many of you are helping the cause? 3.6%. But if Mr. Amsterdam doesn't come on one morning, y'all ring down your phone, y'all message down your phone, y'all call Tom, Dick, or John and ask why Mr. Amsterdam ain't coming on. I ain't cussing you for that. I'm happy that you're dedicated to viewing the program, but where's your dedication to share it? Yeah, Kevin Cook, some maths wrong. Maybe, man, you fix it. I don't really and truly. Kevin Cook, did you share the program? Tell me that. Did you share the program? No, Flash Garden, I ain't talking about you. Right? I'm talking about all of us. We have a collective responsibility. We have a collective responsibility. Some people tell you, we are afraid. Use pseudonyms. That is a good thing about social media. It allows you to use false names. It allows you to use false names. Use false name. Somebody is asking me, Mr. Amsterdam, can we deal with the facts? Odessa Natalia, can we deal with the facts, Mr. Jordan? Just share. The facts are dealt with. The facts are there. You could help to deal with it, share it. I'll have a good day. It's 26 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. I love you. Tough love is love still. Tomorrow we're going to have Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Norton. Leon Salem, you might be surprised to know many of them are there quietly listening, because that's what they do. They quietly listen. They're those who are bumptious and presumptuous enough to come and make their idiotic comments, which I've been quietly blocking and dismissing some of them for the last 2 weeks. Y'all notice they ain't got no Miranda Brong anymore because I quietly dismissed Miranda. It was a Thursday like this when Mr. Jordan was presenting facts. And it uttered some foolish comment, and I said, well, you know, maybe I've had enough of you. Time to go. Understand? Avril Edwards says she shares only to people who are interested. She shares to about 10 persons. Yes. And that share to about 10 persons will reflect perhaps as 10 shares or 1 share. And if it reflects as 10 shares, imagine your 10 shares being taken away from 36 shares out of more than 1,000. You understand what we're saying? Your responsibility is not only to come and listen in the morning, but you have to share. You have to have discourses in your groups. If you're afraid to share on social media, I can imagine you're afraid to even raise the topic with some of your co-workers. Anyhow, I love you all. Sorry for those who believe that I should still entertain calls and discussions on this morning's program in particular. It's not regular that we do that on Thursdays, and we have had so much. We're past the 9 o'clock hour. We went 36 minutes past the time. And reasonable people will understand that we can't do much more for you. Love you. Goodbye.